This is Scott Becker with the Becker Business Podcast, the Becker Private Equity Podcast. We're joined today by a brilliant lawyer partner at McGuireWoods who runs a lot of the litigation in the more sophisticated litigation, a lot dealing with healthcare and private equity. We're joined today by David Pivnick. David, as many people don't know, is a dual citizen. He's Canadian and American. Thus, he becomes on all things our Canadian expert, whether we're talking hockey, curling, Justin Trudeau, or anything related to Canada. He's our go-to person. He's actually extremely well-rounded and brilliant. You had said yesterday, one of the best comments I've seen in a long time, that the prime minister took over for Justin Trudeau, that everybody gets 15 minutes of fame and his 15 minutes are over. And again, there was this contentious election where people thought that the Conservatives were going to win. Pierre something, Palavu, I can't ever pronounce it. I don't, maybe you can pronounce it, I'm sure.
Polyev?
Polyev. I maybe as close
I'm not sure
as
that's right either, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, no, I think you're certainly in the ballpark. And instead, this guy Carney won. And Carney so far has been seemingly is almost as unpopular as Trudeau got to be at the end of his prime ministry. And the only reason that this guy won and the Liberals won again is because Trump so attacked Canada that there was a rebellion against this sort of conservative pro-U.S. voice in Polyev. And so what is going on in Canadian politics, and does it matter? Those two questions. And the second question is sort of a joke. Does it matter? I say that facetiously to tease fun at our Canadian brethren, which we love. But what is going on in Canadian politics? Anything that you could share with us? What exactly is going on up there?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, on the latter part, I know you say it tongue in cheek, but it certainly matters to Canadians. I think it is probably less viewed as less important in the States, and that's probably part of what bothers, I think, a lot of Canadians, and why there was that backlash in connection with President Trump's comments about the 51st state, et cetera. And I do think that galvanized a lot of Canadians and did help swing the Canadian election. In terms of what's going on in Canadian politics more generally, I mean, look, it's an incredibly different system than the States because, at least ostensibly, there are multiple parties. I mean, I know people here pretend there's a Green Party and that there's other choices, but really it's a two-party system, and the other parties are just pulling votes away. In Canada, it used to be that there were meaningfully at least four parties, Bloc Quebec, well, only relevant in Quebec, but significant in Quebec and winning a lot of seats there. And the NDP used to be pretty relevant too, in addition to Liberals and Conservatives. Now it's certainly become much more heavily focused on the Liberal and Conservative parties. And the reality is the Liberals have held power seemingly forever, tend to be wildly unpopular as time progresses. And Justin Trudeau was heavily, heavily disliked. And ultimately the party survived, I think, because of Trump's comments and retains power. So in terms of what's going on, I think Canada is sort of at an inflection point where there are some concerns in the country in terms of cost of living, inflation, and how to handle some immigration situations. And I don't know that they have strong leadership that's actively moving the country forward. And the Liberals often seem distracted on sort of social politics as compared to truly running the country and making sure that things are going well for, its citizens.
The Canada exports to us some of the brightest people that I know, including yourself, and I'm thankful to your parents for producing you, which I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you before, but literally one of the best, brightest people that I know. Besides like the Mounties, maple syrup, most of my knowledge of Canada comes from either Don Cherry and hockey or from South Park when they talk about it too. What else should people know about Canada? I know Banff British Columbia is supposed to be beautiful. Quebec and the people in Montreal are a little stuck up. What else does somebody have to know about Canada? Or if I know it was at one point a big oil exporter, Edmonton, the Oilers, the hockey team's named after that. Give us something vital or important that we should know about hockey besides the greatness of your parents and family. What else do we know about Canada for those in the U.S. that that really didn't even realize that Canada was. I thought it was a suburb of Chicago for a long time, but I guess it's its own country. What should we know about Canada?
Yeah, I think that says a lot more about the education system in Skokie. And I'm not going to besmirch your parents, who are wonderful people, but it raises some questions about your upbringing if you thought Canada was a suburb of Chicago, even tongue in cheek. But I think one of the things that you sort of, it's alluded to in your statement, but it's not just the countries of the North. It's a massive country, size-wise bigger than the States, and it's a hugely diverse country, not just in terms of population, but in terms of going across the country at the different places, like starting in the Maritimes out east, where the fisheries and other industries are significant, and they're true small islands, very rural communities with some big cities like Halifax. Toronto and Montreal are obviously world-class cities that you know about, and I think for anyone listening who hasn't been to either or both, I think those are must-visits, as is, frankly, Vancouver on the other coast. But I think just the general sprawl of Canada, how large it is as a country, how relatively underpopulated it is in relation to the state. Larger territory, but about a tenth of the population, and only really 3 truly major cities in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, although, maybe Edmonton and Calgary or Quebec City would take exception to that, or Ottawa, the capital. But I think really, truly 3 major cities. So I think worth knowing that it's a great country that offers across the country different experiences. Banff is a great place for a couples retreat and beautiful hikes and scenery in the mountains. I think people don't appreciate how easy it is to get there and to explore, a great country just to the north.
And
I have a suburb of Chicago.
No, and I have a serious question for you. So, maybe you could help me with this. I grew up watching a TV show called Rocky and Bullwinkle, and I don't know, do you actually see moose every day in Canada, even in the big cities like Toronto?
Well, I'm going to first I have to say this. You've aged yourself, because that was my father's favorite show growing up. So I used to watch Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons as sort of an homage on the oldies station to my father, and I'm glad that you've sort of aged yourself there. You do not see moose or mounties everywhere you go. You have to actually work pretty hard to come across a moose or a mountie in Canada. Maple syrup easier to find.
The thing that the commonality between your father and I is twofold. One, we have to deal with you. 2 is that we both have great taste in television, apparently. So that is what that is. It is what it is. No, David, in all seriousness, I mean, the politics of Canada seem like a mess compared to the pristine political debate and the level of debate that we have in this country, in the United States. It seems like it's sort of a cesspool up there between I see the tweets every day of Pierre Poilievre. He seems to be taking after Carney every single day. Here, our politicians seem to be much more diplomatic, so to speak.
I would not. I know. Again, you're being facetious. I sadly think it's a little bit of imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I think Pierre Poilievre's strategy was very clearly predicated on taking Donald Trump's momentum and trying to leverage it in Canada. And I think he ultimately ran into 2 challenges. One, I think for people, whether you like President Trump or not, it's hard to argue the man's a showman and has some charisma. And so the folks he appeals to, he really appeals very strongly, and he can command a room. Pierre Poilievre just doesn't have that same gift. And so he was trying to do a little bit of a Trump-light performance, but he's just not President Trump to pull it off, which makes for an interesting dynamic. I think his 15 minutes is also widely run at this point. So I think it'll be interesting how it plays out. But really, it is a function of lots of people trying to do President Trump where they can't pull it off. And when it bounces back in the other direction, it's a dramatic swing. And I think that took place in Canadian politics. I think we see it with some international politicians, not just in North America. We've seen it with some South American politicians in Europe, where people have seen a strong conservative right-wing lean work with a charismatic leader in a guy like President Trump, and are trying to follow suit. It's just not as easy to do where you don't have his flair, for better or for worse.
I think, with all joking aside, it's actually a brilliant analysis. It's one of the reasons I just love talking to David Pivnick. He's a partner at McGuireWoods. He's one of the brightest people that I know, and can really talk intelligently about any subject. I tease him about Canada, but Canada's obviously a wonderful place. It's not a suburb of Chicago. It's a state. It's a 50. No. It's a fantastic country. I know my geography. Are you kidding me? In any event, David, it is always great to talk to you. The brightest of the bright, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Becker Business, the Becker Private Equity Podcast. We'll be next week back with David talking about leadership and law and all kinds of sophisticated subjects. Today, I was reading so much stuff yesterday about the different tweets and discussion between Polyev and Carney that I couldn't help myself but ask about Canada. It's always a pleasure, though. Thank you so much, David.
Thanks for having me on, Scott.